All right, everybody, welcome back. Another episode of Indy Reporter. I told you last night, hey, I was going to be here. I didn't know when or if it was going to be live or it was going to be recorded. Well, guess what? Yours truly is live. That's right. But it's going to be very 20 minutes, if not less than that, because there are three of the bills I couldn't even watch because they're not up on the IGA website right now. And what I mean by that is that they're not, the recordings haven't been posted yet. So I can't even see what happened in agriculture in the House between the veterinary loan repayment, Department of Agriculture, and the seed laws. I'd really like to know what that one is all about. But I did watch a couple of them live on Thursday, and a couple and other ones I just went back and watched last night. Now, during Veterans Affairs and Public Safety, very interesting what is happening with this one. So the emergency ambulance service is basically saying, hey, guess what? These areas that don't have or don't have a way of getting an ambulance or emergency services to somebody, you guys are forced now to figure it out, whether it's by making your own or like getting your own, kind of like how Wayne Township had their own EMS and then ended up selling it through Indianapolis Emergency. Or one example that I found apparently was in Henry County, where it takes like a half an hour sometimes to get an ambulance over there or any kind of emergency services. So, right, this bill basically says you guys got to figure it out. Now, they're not forcing these areas to raise their taxes to have their own. They can be done privately. So I started thinking to myself, all right, so this is what we got. Say this area that doesn't have, a good emergency service or has it figured out. Someone calls up for an ambulance. Now they're getting billed for the ambulance because this bill forces that county to have to have it available. And so this person might get possibly overcharged because if they don't have insurance or even if they have insurance, and now it's up to them to figure it out. Now, the other option is for that county to raise the taxes so they could have their own. I'm on the fence on this one. Overall, not a big fan of it, but it's fine. I understand it. There was some talk during committee about like how the rural areas are affected the most. Like, yeah, we already knew that. And there was a lot of questions of like, how is it going to be funded? And the bill specifically says the county or the areas do not have to fund it, but they have to figure a way out of getting emergency ambulance services. We'll see what happens with that. Apparently, I was heard in committee last year and it passed, but it never really went farther than that. It might have gotten through House, but it never went into the other side. Nothing really happened with that. All right, so following that, the Indiana Defense Task Force funding. Not much with that other than it says the bill provides that certain amounts appropriated for the state fiscal years must be used exclusively to support priorities identified by the Indiana Defense Task Force. Now, the only reason I even brought this up is because it said it provides that the IEDC shall consult with and receive approval from the task force prior to obligating it or expending funds. I got a good chuckle out of this because Mitch Gore asked the person about the bill, or even people affiliated with the bill, is like, why is the lieutenant governor part of the task force? Like, he's specifically asking him about Micah Beckwith. That's all he really cared about. However, the following one, 1343, to do with military and veteran matters. Not much going on with this one besides the fact, is this 43? Yeah. Other than the National Guard, basically having the National Guard military police force, which basically has it where if there is like this weird circumstance where the National Guard has to be used, this will give them authority to arrest people. Anything past that, not exactly sure. And people are asking around, is like, well, what does that constitute? Is like COVID? And it's like, yep, just like COVID. And what Mitch Gore had a problem with, I'll let him explain it.
Do you have? I got to tell you, I have as a law enforcement officer, I have heartburn just knowing. I mean, I'll be honest with the members of the committee. I think part of the reason we fought a revolution is because King George kept troops on our streets. We traditionally, I think,
part of the revolution was because King George kept troops on the streets. Yes, had nothing to do about the rights, had nothing to do about taxation without representation. Totally had to do with the troops on the streets. However, I didn't see Democrats complaining about when, even in Minnesota, during COVID when they were using police or National Guard to make sure that people were staying in their homes. And they didn't have a problem during that, but all of a sudden now they have a problem with this. Now, the first place that I thought of was Indianapolis. What if the governor calls for a state of emergency and then uses the National Guard? For me, don't really have an entire problem with it. We just saw that there were protests happening over in downtown the other night. I went and covered the protest that was happening during the NBA Finals, and they had these protests were actually shutting down streets, and IMPD was allowing them for that to happen. That's how you can tell how cucked IMPD is, especially by their douchebag chief of police Chris Bailey, who is now number 2 to Joe Hogsett. We'll see how well that works out. Maybe he'll run for mayor. The other ones that, they're okay. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about in local government. I may or may not go back and watch all this. Interesting part about the extension, I think it was either annexation. Yeah, it was annexation outreach meetings. Lady that was in Crown Point was pointing out of how there was all this expansion happening in Crown Point, which I have family in the region. They were confirmed all this, that they wanted to build a new a new sewage facility, public waste facility. And there was no real meetings on it. And it was mostly because the developer that was building these, developing this land for housing, they were like, well, we want to have this. And then there's like an extra rock that was thrown in the pond where the land was donated to the city, but they were affiliated somehow with the developer. Very interesting stuff. Not sure if I'll go back and watch it. If I'm bored, I will. But you know what was going on that I was very excited about, sarcasm, was SB 21 that had to do with the state sandwich. That's right. They wanted to have the breaded pork tenderloin as the state sandwich from Andy Zay, whose last day was on Thursday because he is now going to be a commissioner on the IURC, so it's going to get transferred to Blake Dorio. I don't think there's a house sponsor on it yet. Not a house sponsor on it yet. It was kind of cute. I will tell you what, as when I say that, I mean like in a boomer way, because, basically Andy Zay made a point about, it helps out the agriculture. It helps out with tourism too, because there are some pork tenderloin fanatics out there. It helps out with people for local businesses, basically. And what was kind of funny is that there was a lobbyist that represented the Jewish Federation, I think, and he was like, "Oh, I don't want it to be the pork tenderloin because we can't have that. And instead, I'd rather have I think it was a pastrami on rye from Shapiro's." And then she ended up recanted it because it was more of a joke than anything, which very funny. I was dying when I was listening to this thing. I definitely had to squeeze one off real quick when I was listening to it. And so, and then after that, they all voted yes. Obviously, they're kind of an endearing moment from Gary Byrne. He'd had a pork tenderloin sandwich that was next to him with some nice crispy fries from what it looked like, and apparently he's a beef farmer. And he's like, well, he took a bite out of it. He's like, all right, I vote yes. But it did make me hungry for a pork tenderloin. So if any of you guys in the comments want to give me advice on where I should go, please let me know. All right, then the final bill was SB 212, which was the state income tax conformity. In this bill, it specifically had to do with conform with certain provisions enacted in Public Law 11921, which is commonly known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. Now, I thought this was going to do with... I was totally thrown off with this bill when I started looking into it. I thought it was going to be more with, you might actually get a break. And it turns out it not so much. And let me break it down a little bit for you. This thing is in multiple sections. The key provisions were adoption tax credit, accelerated cost recovery system for solar and wind, telehealth and high deductible health plans. And so I started looking into the solar and wind section. And basically what it does is that it allows people to get tax help long term, not right away. Like, hey, you'll eventually get it, but it's going to take a couple of years. But apparently the most fiscally problem, quote unquote, is going to be the adoption credit, which that's what they've been talking about for a long time. It's like, hey, won't we get we have all these children in adoption. Won't be trying to get them a better tax credit, which, good for them is what I say. Hey, not bad. I'm only 10 minutes in. We're going to get done with this baby real quick. All right. So the other thing that I was looking at, which I talked about last night, were these two bills, which was HB 1210, which was Department of Local Government Finance from Craig Snow. And then the other one was from Jeff Thompson, which is HB 1259. I want to play this one part of it because one of the parts of this bill for 1210 had to do with what was it called? CCRC, which is the Continuing Care Retirement Community, and it would extend and expand the property tax exemption. But this lady from Bartholomew County, I think she's an assessor over there, she has a very interesting point on some of this.
To pay fees that include taxes. One nonprofit CCRC has a for-profit golf course connected to it, and many have lavish clubhouses and provide lavish services. There is no Medicaid resident in any of these facilities. Several are tearing down low-income housing, which was instrumental in getting them the exemption in the first place, especially in my county, and they're building more independent living units that fit these high-end models. The key is that they are not all alike.
So she's basically saying, hey, understand the continuing care retirement community, like places that actually do care for a lot of the elderly, because she pointed out how the boomer generation is going to be retiring, and there are going to be a lot of these. So, hey, we understand the property tax exemption for them. However, we need to look at the bigger. There's another problem with this when you have for-profit golf courses connected to some of this. Also, you're demolishing low-income housing to put up these continuing care retirement communities, and they're all getting property tax exemption. So, what is exactly going on here? Obviously, and there's actually another section where this will change, or is the property tax levy where the local areas can't expand the levy because of SB1. It's like, hey, guess what? You guys aren't getting enough money because of SB1, and you're going to try and use the property tax mechanism by expanding the property tax levy. That can't happen. I'm telling you, I already started listening to the other part, the 1259, and I was in a group today. I was at an event today, and they were talking about it, and they said, rumor is this is what it is. The open secret is like, this is the SB1 fix. And I was listening to 1259 on Thursday live, and it's all the same fear mongering. Hey, we're not going to get enough money. Hey, what is this going to happen? How are we supposed to make more money? And I can tell you what, right now, the school corporations are probably going to bring in higher referendums. There are also going to be sneaky ways of trying to raise money. I think they're in Avon, they were going to add a wheel tax. We saw this over in parts of Johnson County as well, where they were adding a wheel tax where there normally wasn't one because of SB1. So be on the lookout for that. I will end up watching the rest of that over the weekend because I'm very interested on some of the more detailed stuff, because this is a massive bill. HB 1210 is massive. I think they even said it's 140 pages, and I think 69 different sections in it. And then in the 1259, same thing. A lot of things that have to do with lit funded debt service, lit procedure, county service lit, a lot of lit. Because we all know that a lot of these places are going to want to raise their local income taxes. If you remember, Fady Cadora was like, hey, we're going to lower all the stuff for the Medicaid or the low income people, but we will raise the local income tax. You guys all have to understand, when you take one thing away, you're going to have to increase something else. It's like the whole J.D. Prescott bill that the people were talking about today. It's like, hey, we can get rid of property taxes, but we're basically going to have to raise local sales tax. Sales tax. Actually had his flyer somewhere where it explained all of it. But the thing with J.D. Prescott's bill is that there was a couple of exemptions as well, and all these lobbies are going to be wanting to get their own exemption so they don't have to pay sales tax for some stuff. If I remember, I'll show it to you guys next week. Oh, there it is. Here it is. I got it right here. So, replace the property tax with a new sales tax on services. Medical, education, and current sales tax exemptions remain tax-free on services. But I don't think it says what the sales tax would go to. I think they would slowly raise it up. This would be a multi-year thing, too. And you already know that everybody's going to that exemption because nobody wants to pay taxes, including yours truly. So with that being said, don't forget Monday I will be having the 20-minute rundown. That's how it's going to be working from now on. And also, I think next week guess what is happening next week? It's going to be, what do they call it? It's like the Indiana State of the Union, basically is what it's called. And so I think that is happening next week on the 14th, if I remember right. And I will be doing a live watch along. With that being said, you guys have a good weekend. Enjoy the playoffs. And